Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history. We're going to be taking a look at some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that are bad sometimes, because sometimes cards are bad. Today's card, the little train that could and then did and now can never again, it's a Union Carrier. Union Carrier was first released in the TCG in Duel Overload as an ultra-rare print. And as of this video, that's the only printing it's received to date. For time on the ban list, it went from unlimited straight to banned on the March 2021 ban list just a year after it's released, and against all odds before Halka Fibrax. Explain that, cosmonauts. A light attribute machine type Link 2 monster with 1000 attack and arrows pointing down and right. Its materials to summon are any two monsters with the same type or attribute, and its effect reads: cannot be used as Link material the turn it is Link summoned. You can target one face-up monster you control, equip one monster to it from your hand or deck with the same original type or attribute. The equipped monster gains 1000 attack. If you equipped it from the deck, you cannot special summon monsters with that equipped card's name for the rest of this turn. You can only use this effect of Union Carrier once per turn. Now, if the name wasn't hint enough for what this card's intended purpose is, the containers on this little train-looking guy's art are actually the same containers depicted in the art of Union Hanger, as in the ABC field spell, the ones that store the Union monsters. Because the simple man's purpose for this card is, of course, to support Union monsters. It's even in the name. And while you can't summon the monster you equip, there are ways to work around that, such as equipping Union Driver, a monster that while equipped can banish itself to equip another Union monster to the same monster it was equipped to. You can then summon that Union monster to your field with its own effects and do whatever it is you'd like with it. It is a nice way to circumvent the summoning restriction. And hell, if nothing else, this is a solid way to get access to the third piece of ABC Dragon Buster, because once it's on the field, it can be banished to summon out the big fusion boy himself. And this was a very great piece of support for the deck that really helped it to be able to keep up with the ever-advancing metagame, which is why it was such a shame for ABC players when this got the axe of the banhammer. But I can assure you it had absolutely nothing to do with the ABC end boards that like 3 people were worried about. See, not only is this card insanely easy to summon, but some of the same plays that ABC players were making were being done to much greater effect and using much better cards. Rip to Calvin Tahan, I guess, for the disrespect to ABC. Because this card does not negate the effects of whatever it is that it equipped, and there are a number of monsters that have effects while they're equipped, and they aren't even Union monsters. ABC themselves would even use one of them in certain builds. Photon Orbital can send itself to the grave while equipped to a monster to add any Photon or Galaxy monster from deck to hand, which would be used to add Galaxy Soldier and give ABC access to Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is a strong card and a solid play. An Omni Negate. Can you imagine? But you know what's even better than an Omni Negate? Not letting the opponent access their extra deck in any capacity, because Dragon Buster Destruction Sword has the effect that while it's equipped, the opponents can't summon from the extra deck. And oh boy, did this adorable little foxy play. In meta threats like both Adamancipator as well as Dragon Link, it was common for both to end on a Borreload Savage Dragon as part of the standard combo. This alone is solid, an Omni Negate and a big dirty beater all in one. But would you look at that, it's also a Dark Dragon, like that little Buster Whelp. And in a deck like Adamancipator playing almost entirely rock types, or in Dragon Link's case playing almost entirely dragons, it was not hard for either to have 2 spare monsters on board as Link material to make Union Carrier here and equip the Whelp to a Borreload Savage Dragon. This meant you had an extra deck lock and a negate to protect any sort of means the opponent would try to get rid of it. This was brutally effective and could win games by itself, without mentioning the other parts of end boards that both of those decks could make. And that's without even mentioning the other fun and cute things these decks could use it for. The 1000 attack gain the monster gets, little known fact, that's an extra negate on an Appaloosa, if by some miracle they make it to, turn 4. Other competitive decks that played it include Megalith, who would use it to get access to Block Dragon and use Megalith's lack of once per turn on its card effects, similar to Adamancipator if they couldn't go for it through the standard Gallant Granite play. Most hilariously though, and what's kind of become a precedent for ban lists I feel lately, none of this is actually what led to it being banned. No, the deck that got this card banned in the TCG would wind up being Drytron, the ritual deck that reinvented the ritual summoning mechanic, using attack points in place of levels. Drytron would go on to utilize this change to find the best way to tell the opponent no at every possible instance. The deck could accrue resources with ease so long as it had access to names to use the Drytron effects, and most importantly, to be able to tribute Cyber Angel Ben 10. And thanks to the fact that Drytrons tribute monsters with attack instead of levels, Union Carrier became a hilariously perfect combo enabler in Drytron specifically. By making Union Carrier, you could equip it with Dawn Knight to itself, a light monster that, when it leaves the field, can send any light monster from your deck to the grave. This, equipped to Union Carrier, would mean that Union Carrier was a 2000 attack machine, and the player could use Meteona's Drytron, the Drytron ritual spell, to tribute Union Carrier and summon out Cyber Angel Ben 10. This not only put Ben 10 on the field to be tributed for any Drytron, but it also dumped a Drytron into the grave to tribute that Ben 10 immediately, which could then get the Drytron bonus effect of a search or an extra summon or a draw on top of the search from Ben 10. This was a very powerful play in the deck, and thanks to endless Ben 10 searches and the likes of Herald of Ultimateness and Ava, it was all too common for the deck to end on 4-ish negates and a giant middle finger to the opponent at minimum. And what makes Konami banning this card so damn funny is Drytron would, in the immediate set after, get Mu Beta Fafnir, a card that did everything that this combo was doing for Drytron and more. They realistically would have dropped Union Carrier for this card regardless, but hey, Konami decided to piss off the ABC fandom like they do about once a year or so to stay consistent, because they gotta be consistent somehow, right? Sure aren't with ban lists. That being said, let's not pretend that this card was not ban-worthy by itself. At this point, I've only covered a few of the ways that this card could be used degenerately, but I can assure you, this card had ways to play for days. And it rhymes, so it's true. Take, for example, a commonly referred to combo on Reddit and various YouTube channels was to make Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, then use Union Carrier to equip Simorgh with Mist Valley Thunderbird. And at the end phase, you could summon out Mist Valley Apex Avian with Simorgh's effect. This functionally becomes infinite negates, because Apex Avian can bounce any Mist Valley card to negate any card, and if Thunderbird is bounced to the hand, it will summon itself back onto the field. So every card the opponent activates, you just bounce Thunderbird, it gets negated, and then you summon back Thunderbird again to go over and over and over, so long as your opponent is ignorant to the existence of the battle phase. But even if they aren't, that's still at least one free negate on your field. And that's not to mention, there was a period where this card was legal, but they banned the little Buster Whelp, but that didn't stop this card from being abused even with that lock gone. Wizard Buster is a card from the same archetype that shuts off all monster effects in the graveyard, making a blanket Abyss Dweller, which in some matchups is just a death sentence. Or the fact that even when it wasn't abusing a broken equip effect from a monster, this card functionally became Foolish Burial for any monster in the game. Being able to equip it to any monster, and then being able to link off that monster for any other link monster meant that you put that equipped monster into the graveyard by game mechanics. And while you couldn't, say, summon back the monster you equipped, let's not pretend there aren't a plethora of monsters that want to be in the graveyard, and that's about it. Take, for example, the entire Orcust archetype, or any given Phantom Knight, any Burning Abyss. There's a long list, and I'm not going to waste our time reading it. Overall, Union Carrier is a generic Link 2 monster that gives you access to all sorts of monsters that have broken effects while equipped, and on top of that, access to any monster that has an effect when being sent to the graveyard, which you know that's going to be abused. So yeah, I guess it's an okay card. It's a sort of card that's just asking to be used in the worst kind of ways. And while ABC players may hate to hear this, it is a card that I believe has been worthy of the ban list. Sorry again to Calvin Tahan. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Union Carrier. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest what cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smokin' Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.